this is a tough one, because what I don't want people to think of is, this is another trend that I'm easy on most other protocols of fasting. The one I don't like is the fast feast concept. I don't mind them eating foods that are their favorite foods. I'm not big on dietary restraint. I just don't like people using fasting as a reason to eat like a child the day after Halloween, right? So, for me personally, a fast shouldn't be followed up with enough food to make you feel sick. It's just silly, right? And I think, to me, if you're using fasting as an excuse to eat whatever you want as much as you want, right, then I don't know if you're just using it for a different purpose, right? So don't be surprised then if you don't get the weight loss you wanted or you don't feel well, because you weren't using it for weight loss, you were using it as an excuse to eat whatever you want to eat. So with Eat Stop Eat, my general philosophy is the minute the fast is done, you go on eating as if you didn't fast, right? So just pretend the fast never happened, eat as you normally would. I know that other fasting protocols have a more strict follow-up to their fast, whether it's you have to have protein or whatever the case may be, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with there be some sort of method to the madness as long as the end goal is, in fact, with an eye on weight loss and not with the magical idea of now I can eat whatever I want as much as I want and I'll still lose weight, and then don't get upset when you don't lose weight. So I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of just going for anything. Now, I do get that after a fast sometimes you want to eat a little bit more. I mean, you just went 16, 24, whatever, you name it, hours without eating, that concept is going to be there. I'd like you to fight it. If you can't fight it, then give into it slightly. If it means a chocolate bar, have a chocolate bar. It's not a big deal. Just don't go out and buy a crate of chocolate bars, right? So there's sort of a sense to it. And then if you find you're the type of human being who absolutely, you for some weird reason, you can't go 12, 16, 24 hours without eating, without being a ravenous monster and eating 8 days worth of food in one night, then don't fast. Not for you, right? Have some common sense there as well.
Yeah, it's common sense, doesn't? Everybody's looking for somebody else to tell them what to do, not thinking about what their body should feel like. Well, how about this? How about we kind of back it up a little bit more and just say, hey, yep, Brad, what do you do after your fast? What's your typical meal after a fast?
Well, okay, so I ended up my schedule. Usually about a dinner-to-dinner fast for Eat Stop Eat works well for me. I'm only skipping 2 meals, right? So I'm having dinner, I'm fasting, and then the next day I'm having dinner just half hour later. Enough of the pattern interrupt me that I get the calorie benefit, the benefit of the fast, etc. But so much of it that's intruding on my life, meaning that I'm principally the person that cooks my household. Everybody gets home and ready for dinner. There's dinner on the table. But lately I had to switch because my kid's schedule again to a 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. fast. So it took a little bit of thinking, right? Because what do I normally have at 10 a.m.? Well, I have a coffee. So I just break my fast with the coffee. And then I would go, some point later on I'd work out. And then after that, usually somewhere around 1, I'd be having lunch and then dinner. So it really was just figuring out when the fast was convenient and then making sure that the meals around it were also convenient, right? So I broke the fast at a time I would normally eat, and I stopped and sort of thought what I'd normally have here, and I would normally have just a coffee from Tim Hortons. Again, I'm Canadian. So that's what I had. I didn't have a coffee and 3 donuts, or I didn't have a coffee and then a protein shake. I just had a coffee and I went on with my day. And the interesting thing about keeping that sense is that since I didn't switch anything, there was no cue to my body that today was a special day, that I should be eating more, et cetera. It just went back into sort of a normal routine. So that's what I find easiest for me.
That's awesome. That's just so simple. Just be prepared to go back to what you would do anyways, pretty much, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's good.
Pretend it never happened.
Well, let's take a moment here because we got some time left on the call. Since you do have a research background, since you do have the intelligence to back this up with legitimate claims, let's kind of dig into some myth busting on fasting. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
All right, let's dig into one of my favorite ones. Brad, all my muscle will disappear if I intermittently fast.
Yes, absolutely. So I love this one because, people say that, and the one thing that really gets me is, what do people say when they're jealous of someone who's been on a diet, they lose weight? They're like, oh, well, they're just going to all gain the fat back anyways, right? But what do they also say is, and they're going to lose muscle? So, suggesting that muscle loss is this permanent thing. when in reality, anybody who's worked out knows the incredibly agonizingly slow process in which muscle is built. Right? It's not something that's just this amazing, I did 3 workouts, I'm up 20 pounds, this is awesome. Similarly, I'm not going to fast for 24 hours. And then of that time you're fasting, you're only actually fasted, right, for maybe half that time because you're still digesting the food you just ate, right? So you have a meal, then you decide, okay, I'm fasting. Well, probably still some amino acids from that food circulating in your bloodstream, right? So then past that, now we have all this research showing that what happens is something called your RQ, or respiratory quotient, begins to go down because you begin to start burning more fat. So we have evidence that you're burning more fat. We have evidence that your carbohydrate burning doesn't really change. So the only way that you could start losing massive amounts of muscle in a 24-hour period is if you're somehow fasting caused your metabolism to double, which it doesn't. We all know that, you can't just simply fast your way into a lightning fast 5,000 calorie per day metabolism. So if the fat is being burnt and you only have so much calorie that you need to burn per day, there's no reason to suggest that muscle was being burnt in any significant amount, especially when you're doing it 24 hours, occasionally once or twice a week type of thing. You have those other 3 to 6 days that you're eating normally. You're also preserving the muscle mass by weight training, which is an important part of any intermittent fasting protocol. Chance to lose that much muscle. In fact, I would even argue that traditional dieting, where you are in a calorie deficit day after day after day for weeks and months at a time, runs a far greater risk for some sort of muscle loss than a 24-hour period without food.
Simply because there's always a deficit.
Exactly. It's just this constant streaming deficit of foreverness. It's horrible.
Yeah. But Brad, how will I get energy when I'm not eating any food?
Totally, and I love this one. This one is kind of not my fault, but my old business's fault. When you think of the word energy in terms of food or supplements, when we say gives you energy, provides you energy, that original claim didn't actually come from caffeine or some sort of stimulant being in the food. Instead, what we got away with is because a calorie really is nothing more than a measurement of the energy content of a food, we were allowed to say that anything with calories in it gave you energy. So the perception, the feeling of energy, the vigor, the alertness, which are the terms you want, is not as related to food as we may think. We've been indoctrinated into that concept because people like me back in the day were able to tell you, buy my supplement, it will give you energy. Buy my cola will give you energy because it's got calories in it. It provides calories. So here you go, right? So in reality, a lot of energy, your feeling of vigor, etc., has a lot more to do with daily sleep patterns, the light in a room, like so many other factors other than the calories that are currently streaming through your blood. In fact, anybody who's had a really large, let's say, Thanksgiving dinner knows that almost the exact opposite happens when you eat large meals.
Sure.
Go to sleep.
Okay, I got one more main myth we could bust, and I'd love to kind of dig into kind of your mission and purpose, because it's so interesting to me that you used to work for the supplement industry, and now you're kind of going against it in a lot of ways. So one more quick myth. If I don't eat, that's not healthy, right? When I started intermittent fasting, I remember my parents coming over and saying, that can't be healthy for you.
Right. And my immediate argument back to that was, I think it's safe to say that in the last 1980, 2000, 33 years now, we've pretty much proven that the other option, which is eating all the time, was probably not the best idea. I mean, I think we've ruled that one out, right? So, and not the concept of, it's not, it's because we ate too much. The problem is, since 1980, let's say, and beyond, when we started really getting worried about obesity, it's not like every single overweight person there was like, I'm eating too much, I'm purposely doing this. What we've realized is the concept of constantly eating, letting the marketing and consumerism drive our eating habits, has caused the average person to gain weight. They weren't doing it on purpose. The vast majority of people who were overweight, even a little bit, it's not like you were a glutton, right? A couple of things might have happened. You slowly gain weight at every sort of major event, right? So you go Thanksgiving, a pound, Christmas, a pound, Super Bowl, a pound, summer barbecues, let's say 2 pounds. it's a slow creep, right? It wasn't like you were just eating like a pig every single day, which is what the general view is. It's like you slipped up a couple times a year and it didn't come back down from it. You just didn't get a chance to eat less. So we know that the advice of eat all the time doesn't work, right? You can blame it on the calories or the carbs or the sugar or whatever you want. That advice just didn't seem to resonate and work with people. Therefore, it's time to try something different. Because what is healthy is getting to and maintaining a healthy weight. I'm not talking about getting to and maintaining 0% body fat, because that's this ridiculous notion that only really exists in the fitness world. But for the average person, getting to and maintaining a healthy weight and being active and adding weight training on top of that is kind of like for me, number one priority. And then inside of that, now you're adjusting how you eat, et cetera, right? But being grossly overweight and then deciding what you're going to do is instead of eating steak every day, you're going to eat organic grass-fed steak, it's not going to solve the problem. It'll cost more. You know, you might feel better about your choices, but it doesn't eradicate the health problems that are associated with that much extra body fat. So my general argument is that, well, the other option wasn't really working so well, so let's give this one a decent go.
Sure. And, you know, so generally speaking, too, if we look at the hormones, what typically happens when somebody does an intermittent fast?